Hey everyone, Dad Consultant here. A bit sweaty as always, post-gym, you know how I roll. I want to talk today about having an emergency fund. Now, I always recommend to people in business or just in personal that they have an emergency fund that's going to cover the costs of everything, their mortgage, bills, groceries, all that kind of stuff. For like put aside in another account that you definitely do not touch. It's an emergency fund for a reason. That's emergencies only, but enough money to cover all those things for about 3 months is a nice kind of round amount to have. It can seem like a lot when you're saving it and putting it aside. Even me, like I put money aside. I think, oh, I could do something with that. But I know not to in case something happens. Now, this came up for me to do the video in particular because a friend of mine, long story short, a friend of mine had a friend who's got a gardening business, horticulture, all that kind of stuff. And he said, he's not sure what he's doing for the business and, like setting up stuff. Can he give you a quick buzz and ask you for questions? I'm like, yeah, sure. Anyway, he gives me a call, we're talking, blah, blah, blah. And this came up. I said, have you got an emergency fund to pay for things? No, I don't. Okay. Now, he's married with kids, right? I said, well, are you the only money maker, for lack of a better word, in the household? And he said, no, my wife works part-time. I'm like, okay. Does your wife's money cover, or can it cover, potentially, your weekly costs? He's like, no chance. I said, well, what happens if you hurt your back? Which is a high risk thing with what he's doing, climbing trees, doing hedges, blah, blah, blah. He's all OH&S, don't get me wrong, he's all over it, but accidents happen. Now I said, what happens if you hurt your back? And he said, well, we're screwed. So I said, okay, so what you should do is put money aside to cover everything you can think of. Sit down and write down all of your bills and overcompensate the amounts a little bit. So if you think, oh, probably $200 for gas, make it 250 or 220, all right? Over exaggerate the amount so you've got a buffer. I said to him, save the amount that you would need potentially for 6 months and put it aside. And he was kind of thinking about it and he did the sums in his head of how much it was. And it was a good amount of money. And he's like, oh, that's a lot of money. I said, I know. And you might be tempted to spend it, like I was saying about myself before when I do it. But don't. Put it somewhere, all right? And just leave it in another account. And it's there if you need it. If you don't need it, down the track, spend it. You know what I mean? But it's there if you need it. Okay, so emergency fund. I think everyone should have one, just to cover themselves, like I said to begin with, for 3 months. Just 3 months worth of expenses in case something happens. And people say, oh, what's going to happen? Nothing's going to happen. Look at the pandemic. COVID. It's still going. With 2 years of freaking lockdowns and nightmares. So anything can happen. And the way the world is now, I don't know what's going to happen. So it's good to put some money aside for an emergency fund just in case you need it, all right? All right, now that being said, I'm going to take my sweaty self home and tidy up. But if you see me on live on here and you have any questions in regards to business, especially marketing and communications, all that good stuff, especially if you have a small business or a startup or a side hustle, because I want to hear from you and I want to help you out as much as I can, jump on the live and ask me any questions that you have, all right? Take care.